There are certain religious texts that don't simply try to answer questions about the afterlife, they attempt to describe an entire hidden structure of existence. One of the most mysterious examples comes from Haft Al Shareef in a dialogue between Al-Mufaddal and his master. In this passage, Al-Mufaddal asks about the destiny of believers and disbelievers after death, and the answer he receives is startling. The discussion revolves around two concepts: Nask, the continuation or reincarnation of believers through human forms, and Mask, the transformation of disbelievers into animal or beastly forms as punishment. Now, regardless of whether someone accepts these teachings literally, symbolically, or historically, the chapter opens a fascinating window into an esoteric worldview where the soul is constantly moving, evolving, ascending, or descending. The text begins with Al-Mufaddal asking, "What is the condition of the believer and the disbeliever in these incarnations?" And the master replies that the believer may continue through human forms across cycles of existence. The believer remains within the dignity of humanity, moving through different embodiments while preserving spiritual potential. But the disbeliever experiences something entirely different. The master explains that the disbeliever does not originally return in human form. Instead, the soul descends into forms associated with suffering, fear, helplessness, and instinct: cattle, predatory animals, wild beasts, and creatures that the soul itself hates and recoils from. And according to the text, this is not temporary. It is described as a prolonged condition of torment and degradation. What makes this chapter so striking is that it doesn't merely describe punishment as happening in a distant hell. Instead, punishment becomes embodiment itself. The soul experiences suffering through the very form it inhabits. The text says these beings experience exhaustion, enmity, killing, slaughter, pain, and fear through repeated transformations. In other words, the body itself becomes part of the punishment, and this raises a profound question: what does it mean to lose one's humanity? Because beneath the dramatic imagery lies a deeper moral philosophy. The text appears to suggest that spiritual corruption eventually reshapes existence itself. A person who lives through cruelty, ignorance, violence, or denial becomes spiritually aligned with lower forms of existence. The soul gravitates downward. Meanwhile, the righteous ascend upward toward refinement, purity, and divine proximity. This idea isn't entirely isolated historically. Across many traditions, we find similar concepts. In ancient philosophy, immoral behavior was often believed to animalize the soul. In mystical traditions, people spoke about becoming spiritually blind, spiritually dead, or spiritually transformed through vice. And in some interpretations of Islamic literature, mask refers to transformation or distortion caused by corruption and sin. Some scholars interpreted these transformations metaphorically, others viewed them literally, but in this chapter of Haft Al Shareef, the language feels intensely real and cosmic. The disbeliever does not merely act like a beast. The soul becomes trapped within beastly existence. What's equally fascinating is the description of believers. The believer is protected from descending into lower forms. Instead, the righteous continue through purified human embodiments and eventually rise toward extraordinary spiritual states. The text describes them reaching the levels of the chosen ones and the purified, and then the language becomes deeply mystical. It says the righteous shake hands with angels. They ascend to heaven and descend to earth freely. Nothing veils them from these realms. This isn't merely survival after death, it's liberation. The righteous soul becomes unrestricted, no longer trapped by limitation or spiritual blindness. And once again, whether someone interprets this literally or symbolically, the underlying message is powerful. Purification expands consciousness. Corruption contracts it. The chapter repeatedly connects these ideas to Quranic verses about paradise, punishment, fire, and trial. But the interpretation given here is unusual. The fire is not only an external punishment. The fire becomes existential suffering itself, repeated embodiment in painful forms, repeated limitation, repeated fear. The soul tastes punishment through existence, and that word taste appears repeatedly in the text. Taste the punishment. Taste the trial. The experience becomes intimate and unavoidable, and there's something psychologically fascinating about that imagery. Because even outside religion, people often describe destructive lives in similar ways. A person consumed by hatred becomes imprisoned by hatred. A person ruled by greed becomes enslaved to greed. A violent person begins living in constant fear and hostility. In a symbolic sense, they already inhabit a type of inner mask, their humanity. narrows, their world becomes smaller, harsher, more instinctive, and maybe that's one reason texts like this endure. Even when modern audiences struggle with the literal claims, the symbolic power remains deeply compelling. The chapter also presents a universe governed by total moral consequence. Nothing disappears, every action shapes the soul, every choice alters spiritual destiny, the righteous move upward, the corrupt move downward, existence itself becomes responsive to morality, and then, toward the end of the passage, the theology becomes even more esoteric. The Master describes the divine as the High, Most High, who appears in any image he wills and enters any veil he wishes. This is mystical language, highly symbolic and historically controversial. Different communities interpreted such statements in radically different ways. Some understood them metaphorically, speaking about divine manifestation through creation. Others treated them as secret esoteric teachings, and many mainstream theologians rejected such ideas altogether. But regardless of interpretation, the passage emphasizes one central idea. The divine reality is beyond ordinary limitation, beyond fixed form, beyond human categories, and human beings themselves exist within layers of hidden reality that most people never perceive. That's why the text constantly returns to the concept of veils. Veils between worlds, veils between spiritual states, veils between ignorance and knowledge. The righteous pierce those veils, the corrupt become trapped behind them, and perhaps that is the true drama of the chapter. Not simply heaven versus hell, but awareness versus blindness. Elevation versus degeneration, purification versus distortion. At its core, this chapter asks an unsettling question. What are we becoming through the lives we live? Are our choices shaping us toward clarity, compassion, and higher consciousness, or toward instinct, hostility, and spiritual fragmentation? The language of reincarnation and transformation may sound foreign to many modern listeners, especially within Islamic discussions where such concepts are often debated or rejected. But as literature, symbolism, and mystical theology, the chapter remains extraordinarily vivid. It imagines a universe where morality is woven directly into the structure of existence, where souls cannot escape what they become, and where every action leaves a permanent spiritual imprint. By the end of the dialogue, the message is unmistakable. Human life is not spiritually neutral. Every thought, action, and belief carries transformative power. The soul is always moving somewhere, ascending, descending, refining itself, or distorting itself. And whether one approaches this text as theology, philosophy, mysticism, or mythology, it leaves us with timeless questions. What makes us truly human? Can the soul lose its humanity? Can consciousness evolve beyond ordinary existence? And if our inner condition shapes our reality, then what kind of world are we creating within ourselves right now? And perhaps that is the real mystery at the heart of Mask and Nask, not merely what happens after death, but what we are becoming. Even now,